Hello, and thanks again for joining us at To Ride the Globe. After 3 weeks in Thailand, we headed to Hanoi, Vietnam. Like in Bangkok, we decided to take a few days in Hanoi to adjust to the local conditions before picking up the rental Honda and heading off. Our first night, we walked to a restaurant in the old quarter of Hanoi to have dinner and watch the traffic. Vietnam's very different from Thailand in terms of culture, food, and driving. Traffic signals are few and far between, so every intersection is basically a free-for-all, or as I see it, a game of 90-degree chicken. For the most part, everything seems to go smoothly, at least until you insert a foreign driver or pedestrian into the mix. But eventually you adjust and adapt to riding in Vietnam. After a night in Hanoi, we headed to Ha Long Bay for a 2-day cruise through these incredible islands. The weather in Vietnam was very different from Thailand. We'd gone from hot and muggy to cool and wet. Even though we were past the rainy season, we had few sunny days, and the clouds stayed low nearly every day. Even so, Ha Long Bay was a beautiful sight. We returned to Hanoi the next evening and picked up the bike the following morning. After adjusting to the traffic and working our way out of Hanoi, we headed north to Ma Pi Lake to stay at our first homestay. We had a great dinner with our hosts and a conversation via Google Translate. Our room, dinner, and breakfast the next morning was a grand total of $13. And this turned out to be the case more often than not in Vietnam. We learned very quickly to stay focused on the road as there are almost always constant obstacles. Some move and some don't. Potholes, chickens, ducks, dogs, pigs, cows, water buffalo, small children, they all seem to live in the road. And forget the water buffalo, check out the 2 women in native dress on the scooter. I'm not really sure what the helmet ears are, but we did see a ton of yellow Pikachu helmets. They're really popular. We stayed in a homestay in Dong Van for a few days. This allowed us to take day trips both across the Ma Pi Leng Pass and up to Lung Ku to the North Pole, which is a huge flagpole on the border with China. If you're considering a similar trip, be sure to read about the tourist permit that's required for foreign tourists to visit the Ha Giang northern area. Most websites will tell you to get the permit in Ha Giang, but as usual, we didn't take the normal tourist route through Ha Giang on the way up. So if you find yourself in Dong Van and need to get the permit, click on the link below to find all the info on where and how to get the permit in Dong Van. Without a doubt, Ma Pi Leng Pass is the scenery highlight of the Ha Giang Loop. We got lucky and were there on a fairly clear day, though there wasn't a lot of sun. The day after we were there, the clouds dropped so low that there was no visibility, and we passed a lot of tour groups on rental scooters headed to Ma Pi Leng. I'm pretty sure they didn't get to see anything when they got there. checking the weather between Ha Giang and Da Nang and finding a forecast of heavy rain for the next week straight, we changed our plans and decided to just hang out in the north. You see a bit of everything being transported by scooter in Vietnam. Or even by tiller, since most people don't have a car and use the family scooter like we would use a car or a pickup truck. We splurged and spoiled ourselves and stayed at Phu Long Treehouse for 5 days. The weather began to clear after a couple of days, but we were enjoying being in a relatively remote location, and we were the only guests for most of the time we were there. While in Phu Long, I decided to get my hair cut and beard trimmed. A great job, all for $1.25. Eventually, we headed east to Ninh Binh for a few days. Perhaps the highlight of one day was meeting these school kids that wanted to practice their English. We gave them each a 2-Ride the Globe sticker, and after we left, we wished we'd spent more time with them learning about their lives in Vietnam. It's easy to forget that this is still a socialist republic governed by the Communist Party. There are signs of capitalism everywhere, mixed with signs of socialism. The people are very friendly, even with a language barrier, and we felt welcome everywhere we went. In Hanoi, there are still many reminders of the war with the U.S., and while we felt a little awkward visiting these memorials and museums, we were welcomed there as well. Vietnam has a bit of everything. The hustle and bustle of the big cities is in direct contrast to the slow, quiet lifestyle of the small villages. It's a fairly poor country, but the people are, for the most part, happy, friendly, and willing to go out of their way to help you. And they're always curious about foreigners on big motorcycles. Back in Hanoi, we treated ourselves to a big meal on our last night in Vietnam. This all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue also included sushi, sashimi, salads, soups, and dessert. We paid about $50 for this massive meal, including 2 beers, which is a lot to our budget, but very little for the amount of food. We were glad we skipped the rain and weather further south and enjoyed our time in North Vietnam. There's still more on our list for points further south, but that will have to wait till next time.